Welcome to the Whole Story podcast. This podcast series is focused on inspiring sustainability in agriculture, using the framework of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the SDGs. Each week, our guests are invited to share their story and leave us with some practical tips for sustainability on farms. I'm Becks Smith, founder of The Whole Story, a B Corp certified social enterprise inspiring, facilitating and articulating holistic sustainability in agriculture. And this podcast has been brought to life in partnership with the incredible team at FMG, who are passionate about partnering with organisations like The Whole Story, so together we can support rural New Zealand. So whatever you're doing while listening to this episode, thanks for choosing us. The best way you can support our mahi is to follow and share the show on whatever app you're listening on, and I hope this episode leaves you inspired and excited about the bigger picture of sustainability in agriculture. Today on the Whole Story podcast, I am joined by Jo Hay from Springbank in North Otago. Jo, her husband Ross, and their 3 kids run a sheep and beef property that they took over from Ross's parents back in 2006. With a teaching background, Jo now wears many hats, but absolutely loves that feeling of getting out and working on the farm. Jo's viewpoint on sustainability is really refreshing, and our conversation around the mindset around change and our ability to find opportunity and challenge is so important. So sit back and enjoy. Or if you happen to be out living the dream shifting brakes while listening to this, don't lose count and make sure it's straight.
So welcome along today, everybody. Today we have with us, joining us from North Otago, Jo Hay. Welcome along, Jo.
Hey Becks, it's great to be here today.
So firstly, I'd love for you to kick into it with telling us a bit about your farming business, who you are, where you are, and what you're farming.
Okay, so my husband Ross and I are farming at Herbert, just south of Oamaru, between State Highway 1 and the coast. So we get a sea view, which is nice. We also get a sea breeze. We farm sheep and beef. Alongside our home farm here at Herbert, we have a lease farm at Meraki, which is roughly 20 minutes away from us. Ross and I work together on the farm with his dad, Alan, who comes out pretty much every day, and he's in his 80s, which is pretty cool to have him around. And our 3 kids are all really involved on farm, so it's pretty common sight to have 3 generations working together, which is, I don't know, sometimes it's a pinch yourself moment. And we also have a really valuable stock manager who runs our Meraki farm, the lease block, pretty much on his own, who is a very valuable part of our team as well. So yeah, that's us.
We've just touched on your farming business, but I wonder if you could tell us a little bit of some of the other hats you wear as well.
Yeah, okay, so I do wear a few hats, and I guess it's been a bit of a journey to get to what I'm doing now. So I was born and bred onto an intergenerational sheep and beef farm, mostly sheep. So I'm a 4th generation farmer. I left high school and studied to be a teacher in Dunedin, and all throughout my teacher training and throughout my high school years, I'd spent my life, as many a farm girl does, rousing in a shearing gang, which is something I absolutely loved. And in my time at training college, it's how I met my husband, who was a farm boy shearing his way into a farm. I moved back here to Oamaru once I graduated and taught at the local intermediate school, and in all of my weekends and spare time I was the part-time farm assistant. Everyone else used to get back to school and say, "How was your holidays?" And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, great, real holiday." Once we decided to start a family, I just worked a little bit of part-time work teaching, and then eventually, I think it was 2017, we took over the lease block, and at that point our farming business was big enough that I couldn't work off farm. Well, I could work off farm, but things suffered. So we made that decision that I would jump full-time into farm work, and that also gave me a little bit of space to start a few things that I'd always wanted to, and to be a lot more involved in the community. I've obviously been involved in play centre and home and school staff and community events, but really jumped into it a lot deeper at that point. So to cut a long story short, I started a regional hub for women that had done training through the Agri-Women's Development Trust. At the time, I saw a real need for particularly sheep and beef farming women to connect. It was at a time when the dairy boom was really going strong and Dairy Women's Network was really strong, and you could just see a whole lot of people felt a little bit sidelined. And so I kind of felt the need to do something in that space. So I started alongside a couple of other amazing women, lip gloss and gumboots, with a great bunch of women. We just did a whole lot of learning. The whole plan was to give people skills and confidence to add value to their farming businesses. But ultimately, it starts with adding value to yourself and realising your potential, giving yourself some confidence. So into that, which was cool, and that fabulous group of ladies still meet now, which is pretty cool. I applied to do the Agri-Women's Development Trust Escalator program in 2019 and was accepted. I was lucky enough to be part of the very special 2020 cohort who got an extended version of Escalator due to COVID. We made the decision that we needed to do that program face-to-face, which meant that we took 15 months to finish that program. I guess for me that was probably quite life-changing. At the same time I was doing that program, I jumped onto the Central South Island Beef and Lamb Farmer Council and also jumped onto our local catchment group steering committee, which in North Otago here is NOSLaM, North Otago Sustainable Land Management. Super proud to be involved with both of those things in making a difference for farmers and helping them unpack various things that they need to be unpacking on farm. Last year I became an elected director of North Otago Irrigation Company, which supplies roughly 26,000 hectares of irrigated ground under pressure out of the Waitaki River, which is pretty cool. And I've just recently joined the board of Meet the Need, which, for those of you who don't know, is a super cool charity that takes protein that farmers grow on farm and they donate and distributes it to food banks around the country. It's Kiwi farmers helping families in need, which definitely speaks to my altruistic side. So yeah, I do wear a few hats.
You certainly do, and thank you so much for that. I've known you now for, I think, since you were doing Escalator in 2020, would have been when we first met through a mutual friend, Emma. Shout out to Emma, thank you for that introduction. But I've never heard that journey, and that was fascinating. I hope that all our listeners enjoyed that too, but me personally, knowing you and now knowing further about your story has been really, really interesting. And you've definitely taken leaps and strides in the agri-sector space to actually give that support and make a difference. So thank you so much for doing that, Mahi. It's not easy at times, but you do it well.
I love it, actually. It keeps me in my happy space. I absolutely love being on farm, and there's no place I'd rather be than being out on farm outside in fresh air. But I really love connecting with people and making a difference, and so that's kind of like the intersection of both of those points. And I was away in Auckland last week, and nothing beats that feeling of getting home, getting out in the morning, feeling the freezing cold air on your face, and just getting a bit of work done. Kind of feel like I'm living the dream in some ways. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that sentiment. All of what you've said just resonates so strongly with me as well.
Yeah.
So something else that resonates really strongly with me is the word sustainability. And I know that it's a word that you're quite passionate about too. So I'd love to hear, Jo, what does sustainability mean to you?
I guess I've thought long and hard about this one, Becks, because it just means so much, but actually it's just how we operate. For me, it's not taking more than we need, and I guess I like to think of sustainability as, and it's not an uncommon concept, but for me it probably sums it up in that it's a three-legged stool, and if a leg of the stool is removed, it becomes unbalanced. It can't sit in a balanced way. The stool will tip over. I guess everything is interconnected, and we can't have one thing without having another. If we don't look after the economics of our farming businesses, we don't have a farming business, and it can't sustain ourselves, it can't sustain a business, and then it can't sustain the community that it's in. If we don't look after the people in our business, there's no one to look after the land, and if we don't look after the land, we actually don't have a business. It's our biggest asset. So it's also interconnected. I don't think you can ever operate in isolation, and when you do, invariably something will tip over. Yeah, I guess something that really resonates deeply for me is Māori whakatauki that I heard recently, and I'm not even going to try and say it because I won't get it right, but essentially what it meant was that our decisions that we make are for us today, they're for our children tomorrow, and they're for our grandchildren not yet born. So while our farming decisions are based on the land and water, ultimately they affect people, and our decisions we make must enable the people in the communities that they belong to thrive. That's it in a nutshell for me.
It just sums it up so beautifully. And I had like almost that spine-tingling moment of you saying sustainability is just a way of being. Like it's not even something we need to define because we are living it and breathing it, and it is so much ingrained in everything we do and how we operate as farmers. It's such an interesting perspective on sustainability, and yeah, bringing that back to that whakatauki, which I'll put it into the show notes so that people can see, because I think that's such a beautiful way of reflecting sustainability as well as that long-term vision and legacy of what we do today and the decisions we make and the impact they have on people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's really strong links between the Māori worldview and the worldview of an intergenerational farmer, and that we're not doing this for ourselves right now, we're doing this for our children and their children after us. It's how we roll. We don't plant a tree thinking that we're going to sit under it. We plant a tree knowing that our children will, and their children will too.
It's such a beautiful image as well, isn't it? And something I'm really proud to be a part of. Something I feel deeply in my core as someone who's from outside of the agricultural sector. It's something I'm now supremely proud to be a part of. And for you, being, fourth generational and coming through that, it must be something that you're immensely proud of too.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
So we have gone pretty deep there. So I wonder if you could tell us, Jo, what your funniest story relating to farming or agriculture is.
We've got quite a few funny stories, and I said to my kids last night, hey guys, what do you think some funny stories are that we've got on farm? And they all were like, oh mum, remember when you did that? I'm like, oh yeah, I do, thanks kids. I guess the biggest funny moment for everyone else in my family is that I have got a superpower, and that superpower is getting stuck. It's usually getting stuck with the Prattley tailing yards on the back, Smoko on the vehicle, and everyone in the tailing gang watching me, which, it's not really a proud moment, is it? Hasn't happened lately, which is quite good, possibly because we've fenced off a lot of those wet areas. So I just actually can't go there now. But I have got a few funny stories, and one goes right back to my childhood. Is we've got a set of cousins that we love dearly, but they're from the city, and they used to come and visit us, and my brother and I would just take great pride and joy at getting them out behind the old Holden Rodeo ute on a car bonnet and whipping them around the paddock for thrills. But we would always make sure we found the part of the paddock full of thistles and cowpats and sheep manure, you name it, we were going to go through it. And we used to take quite a lot of pride in winding up for that moment. So always a bit of fun times to be had on farm. Funnily enough, those fun times often happen during adverse events of weather too, don't they? The weather gives us a little bit more. We've skied down our slopes, which is right close to the sea, so it doesn't happen often, but we have done it. And every time there's a rain event, the kids just want to go sliding down the hills, making a mess. So I am told that teenage children are permitted activities when it comes to degradation of our paddocks at times. People with teenagers will understand my pains.
Yeah, and I think it's that when life gives you lemons, make lemonade situation. When you get adverse weather, there's something about farm kids who seem to make the most of it rather than sit inside and sulk about it. They seem to go out and find something to do.
Absolutely. I'll never forget our youngest child. He was born during a drought, and we must have had a few dry years because we had our first real rain and he was maybe not quite two. And just the utter joy on his face at puddles. The other two kids had a lot of puddles as a wee kid, but not this one. Just the absolute joy at making a mess in a puddle. It's like, oh, well, there you go. Bit more washing, but lots of fun.
Yeah, the simple things, right? Like, it's cool to see those moments, especially in farm kids. I do like how a lot of your funny stories are actually probably funny for everyone else and not so funny for you. I think mine are probably really similar. My family spend a lot of time laughing at me rather than laughing with me. Hey,
absolutely.
That's my job in life.
Someone's got to be the butt of all the jokes, don't they?
They do, yeah. It's generally me, and I'm lucky, maybe I'm lucky in that I can blame it on my non-farming background. That's normally my go-to, oh well. I'm a city girl. I'm new to this.
Yeah. You're not helping me, Becks.
Sorry. So, what have been some of the low-hanging fruit with regards to sustainability in your farming business then, Jo?
For us, probably the biggest low-hanging fruit was something we saw quite a long time ago. And that was starting that journey of fencing off our waterways. So we took over the farm in 2006, which is actually kind of quite a long time ago now. Feels like yesterday, but clearly it wasn't. But while sheep don't like to go in the water, they do go in the water, usually when you don't want them to, but they're not very good at getting out of the water again. So we've got a whole lot of creeks on our farm. The farm's called Springbank. It's all ephemeral waterways. They don't constantly flow, but there are some really big, deep holes. What you'd find is the old lamb gang would be having a play, and then you'd have a whole lot of lambs in a hole that couldn't get out, and you'd lose them. Or the only time that you would want to go into the waterway was when she was lambing and you were trying to help her, and you'd be trying to lamb a ewe in the creek, which is not fun for anybody. So I guess we just started this journey of looking at our farm, where are the fastest wins we could make, and excluding the stock from the waterways. Obviously, with that comes the fact that you've got reticulated water, which is great for animal health as well, and tidying that up. But it was looking at the farm and realigning all the paddocks, and it's taken us years, but we've gone pretty much around now. We've gone right around the whole farm, and the paddocks are all realigned to go with the contour of the ground, which goes with the contour of the creeks. Because we're sheep and beef, but for a long time we were predominantly sheep, you've got to have 7-wire fences, and we do have netting fences as well. So you can't put those close to a creek, because in a flood they become a bit of a sieve, and they take a bit to clean and tidy up again. So we watched where the water would go and took note of it, and we've made sure those buffers are reasonably wide so that in a rain event the water will just flow, and it's not very often that things will get caught in the fence, I guess. That's just something that we've done over the years, and now we've got these lovely fenced off waterways. The paddocks are all kind of in the right contours. I think we're getting the best out of it now, which is really cool. And now, of course, we're into the planting journey, which was a little bit frightening at the start when you use the NZ riparian planning tool, and it tells you how much money you're going to need to spend on your plants. So instead of me doing that, being a tight sheep and beef farmer like we are, I like to grow things, so I started my own native nursery, which is pretty cool. I'm finding I don't have as much time as I think I do for it, however, but it's pretty cool watching the plants grow and then planting them in the ground. Yeah, so it's a slow and steady race, but we're on the journey.
It is that slow and steady race, and I'm quite an impatient person, and I, the same, got into the fencing and wanted to have my own nursery and the planting, and then I realised how long it took some of these native plants to grow from seeds, and I was like, oh, when are they ever going to get big enough that I can get them in the ground? And why can't I plant out the entire farm yesterday? So I've had to reflect on that and force a bit of patience into myself for that exact reason, is it's a slow burn. And you're saying, it was 2006 when you took over the farm, it feels like yesterday. I think that's a really important point to note, is that time actually goes along faster than you think. And so if you make the 20-year plan now, it'll be gone before you know it. But make the plan and start the small steps, because actually you might be surprised when you get 20 years down the track and you've actually achieved your goals and you've got there.
Yeah.
Although I'm not as good as you at my setup on my farm nursery. Mine's pretty haphazard, and my plants are nowhere near putting in the ground. But it's my goal for this spring, summer, autumn is to get better.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
it's a work in progress.
The amazing thing is they just keep growing while they're in the pot. So, as long as you water them.
I've set it up on the back of my veggie garden, which has a timed sprinkler, because no doubt if I put it anywhere else, I will forget to water it. And plants in the Maniatoto without water generally shrivel pretty quickly in that early growth phase.
Yeah. Mine are in the driveway, so I actually have to walk past them all the time. That is a surefire way to remember to water them, because otherwise it wouldn't happen.
Yeah. So carrying on from that then, what's exciting you the most about your farming business over the next 5 years?
I know. Interesting times to be asking that question, isn't it? I guess something that really resonated was listening to a few economists talking a few weeks ago. The picture isn't rosy, but tough times bring out the best in people, sometimes the worst. But there's always opportunities, and I guess we're both probably people that look for opportunities. And so we'll just be looking for those opportunities within that. We've got a relatively small home farm, and with a small farm comes the issues of not having enough scale. So we're always trying to find ways to grow our business and work on that scale piece to effectively have our business more sustainable for the long term, and thinking about our children and their children after them and what we can do to work on that. So, while times are tough right now, it's definitely looking for the opportunities within that. There's lots of things that excite me, to be honest, about where farming's heading. We've got such a cool industry, we produce such a wicked product, and people love it, right? So, things are a bit tough, but we'll come through the other side. I've got every faith. Something else that I'm just really excited about at the moment is just the use of technology on farm. I might be a little bit of a technophobe. Those that have been in a Zoom meeting with me will know this is true. But just having technology on farm that helps us make decisions, that helps us record stuff. We were in a pilot program years ago now with the very start of what was not quite then a cloud-based farm system for farm data and reporting and movements and whatnot. And to see where that's gone in a relatively short time, and now to have all these other things on farm feeding into that and giving us information. We know the temperature of our soil, we know the moisture content in our soil, we can use it to make effective irrigation decisions, which helps with our production. We know how our stock are growing, we know how they are dressing out when they're being at the plant, so we can make all these decisions. That technology that we're using now is only going to escalate into much higher levels and much more widely used. So, for me, it's pretty exciting to have a whole lot of things that are going to help us do our job better.
It's awesome. I love the agri-tech space, and I love the integration of technology with traditional farming systems. And so for me, that's something that I'm really excited about too. Knowledge is power, and data collection in a way that's efficient and effective and accurate is actually providing that knowledge, which provides us the power as farmers to make really good decisions and faster decisions. It frees us up to actually be able to do more of what we love in farming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think looking forward, we want the brightest minds in our sector, and having the use of so much different agri-tech is definitely an opportunity for all of the children coming through to be able to use their amazing skills that they do have in the tech space to enable us. It's another way that children can be involved on farm, which it's really cool.
Yeah, I like to think about it that pretty much anything that somebody's interested in at school can be applied to the ag sector. I think we have probably the most job security and certainty for anyone with any passion or interest, because people will always need food, and we need such a diverse range of skills.
Yeah, absolutely.
An interesting question then, which hopefully will provide some gems for others, but what has been the best farming advice you've ever received?
This one makes me smile. It's really simple, but it's from a pretty special man. My father-in-law, who lives around the corner from us and is part of our team, he's in his 80s and still comes to work every day, which is pretty cool. He has always said, North Otago is drought prone. We've we're partly irrigated, but it's not foolproof. And he's always said, every day, Joe, every day is another day closer to the rain. And it's such wise words, but it brings a whole lot of other messages with it. You know, like the sun always comes up in the morning. It doesn't matter what situation, you know, it could be the tough financial times that people are experiencing right now. Every day we get through this, it's another day closer to things coming right. We're in a cycle, you know. The same with the weather. Every day of tough weather, we're another day closer to the sun coming out, to the rain coming when we need it, to the rain stopping for those who do need it to stop, you know. I guess it's kind of a mindset thing, isn't it? And I just love that piece of advice.
Such sage wisdom, and from such a special person too. And you know what? When you face those tough times, it is day by day, and it's the little things that you can grasp onto that get you through. And so even though you know it logically, saying it out loud or having someone say it to you and reflecting on that can sometimes make all the difference to getting through a day. It's such an optimistic way of looking at the world. And I think we need to bring a bit of hope and optimism back to the agri-sector.
Absolutely. Yeah. So every day is a day closer to the rain, or whatever else you need in your life.
So that probably ties in really nicely with the next question. With the fast pace and the never-ending list of change that is coming at us, almost like an avalanche at the moment, how do you, Joe, prevent that overwhelm, burnout, or even apathy and stand up and face the challenge?
Yeah, it's a really good question, isn't it? But I think as farmers, we need to remind ourselves, firstly, it doesn't matter what facet of life you're in, it doesn't matter what sector or industry you work in, change is a constant. It's always happening. Nothing will ever be the same. And in farming, it's just no different at all. Yes, the pace of change at the moment is fast, and it can be overwhelming at times, right? But complaining about the rate of change, it won't slow it down. It will probably continue to speed up. And I heard a wise man say lately, he said, you know, change is hard, but changing is harder. And I think we just have to focus on what we can control. You can control your mindset, and we have a saying on the fridge, essentially, your attitude determines your altitude. And you can focus on everything that's going wrong, but when you focus on everything that's going wrong, things go wrong. Or you can choose to focus on all the stuff that's going right. Yeah, things might be hard. There's a whole lot of regulation coming that we don't really know where it's going to land, but we still know how to look after our stock really well. We still know how to look after our land really well. So let's just do what we do and do it well. I also think it's important to not put your head in the sand, pretend it's not coming. Keep widely read and look into the future and see the trends that you can see coming. We probably wouldn't have fenced all our waterways off all those years ago had we not been thinking about the future and thinking about what it looks like. I don't want to be the doomsdayer, but we know that we won't be able to tail our lambs forever. We know that we won't be able to have our dogs in the yards forever. We know that we're going to have a whole lot of biodiversity stuff and work-ons going on. We know that we're going to have to be reporting our emissions. We know all these things are coming. Wherever the regulation ends, I guess, is one thing, but we have to remember what the market is requiring of us. So we need to keep our eyes on the horizon around what's coming. I think when you can see things coming over time, no, they're not going to come and they're not going to start happening tomorrow, but we need to have it in our mind that this could happen and what might I do in the meantime to make that transition easier. We don't farm now like our grandparents farmed when they farmed, and our children's children won't farm when they farm like we do now. Land use change will evolve. Farming will evolve, our practices will evolve as our knowledge grows. So let's just embrace the change.
Once again, it's back to that knowledge is power, right? It doesn't cost you anything to be thinking about it in that space, and it doesn't force you to change, to just think about it.
No, just think
and to
about
be
it.
Open-minded to what the future might look like, or if that eventuated, what might we do?
And I guess it's just having an open mind about it. You could read all of the same stuff and choose to look at it in a negative, poor me way, but I don't know, maybe it's just my mindset. I just choose to look at things in a positive way, and I guess There's another quote that has always resonated with me, is that positive thinking doesn't necessarily mean you're ignoring the stresses in life. It just means you're approaching it in a productive way. And that's the way I choose to think about it. Yes, we can see these things coming, but hey, let's embrace it. Let's jump on it before maybe it is a regulation. Let's do these things a bit early, and you never know what that might get you or where that might put you. Ultimately, linked back to that sustainability piece, if you can see things that are going to make your business more sustainable in the long term, why wait for regulation to do that for you? Why not do it before?
Yeah, and it's finding that opportunity in every challenge, right?
Yeah.
I actually set that as a bit of a challenge to myself. When something comes up that you have a defensive reaction to or feel challenged by, how can you find the opportunity within that and flip the script on it and create something positive out of that reaction?
And sometimes it's thinking with that reaction, why did I react that way? Why did it cause me to feel like that? And sit with it and then respond. Don't react.
Such great advice. So we really like to leave people back down at the ground level. And so I'd love to ask you, Jo, if you had one take-home sustainability tip for other farming businesses, what would it be?
I think it's just whatever you're doing, just start. Whatever you want to do, just make a start. And along with making that start, record it. Because recording is key, right? We're moving into this world where we can claim that we're the best farmers in the world. We can claim all these claims, but unless they are validated by something, they're meaningless. And I'm sorry to say it. Yes, you're doing great work, but how can you prove you're doing great work? That's the key. So record it in your cloud-based software, take photos. It's just like your winter grazing. We know that we need to take photos beginning, middle and end with all of your projects. When you go to fence off that waterway, take a photo of what it looked like first, fence it, take another photo, go back every year as the plants grow from the same points and measure the increase in the biodiversity that's there. Just measure the stuff. You're doing great things on farm already, so just record it. What it does is it shows the journey over time, and it gives the people that want to buy your product the assurance that you are doing what you say you're doing.
That's such a great tip. I have moments all the time, and I'm sure you do too, although it sounds like you're much better at recording than I am. But you look back and you think, gosh, I wish I'd got a photo of that, or I wish I'd written down when we started that project, because you think you'll remember it all, or you think you'll be able to explain it all, but actually sometimes just a photo speaks 1,000 words, and having a good recording system is key to our farm business success as well. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there, and so it's such great take-home advice. Thank you, Jo.
And I guess that's probably why I'm such an advocate of why when we did Fat Plus that I was so keen to do it was actually, we do all this stuff, and I've got no doubt that the bulk of farmers do all that stuff, but we just have to prove that we do it all. And while you say you think I'm a good record keeper, I take the photos, but I need to get better at putting them in a place, as we all do. But doing something like the Farm Assurance Plus has definitely put some measures in place so that I know what I need to be recording, when I need to be recording it. Doing your visual soil assessments, get out with the kids. They know just as much about doing this stuff as I do, thanks to our catchment group. And it's just recording it all, taking photos, writing down a bit of stuff here and there, and chucking it all in the cloud somewhere.
Thank goodness for the cloud. So I'd like to thank you so much, Jo, for today. It's been wonderful talking to you. I've just really enjoyed the opportunity to bring some of your wisdom or some of your experiences as well to the rest of our audience. So thank you so much, and I really appreciate you and your time.
Well, thanks for joining us today. I'd like to reflect on some of the Sustainable Development Goals that we covered throughout our conversation. The first being goal number 3, good health and well-being. We addressed that in the mindset piece around the opportunities in change and challenge. Goal number 6, clean water, was evident through the investment of time, money and resources that Jo and Ross have put into the massive fencing and planting efforts on their farm. Goal Goal number 11, sustainable communities. This is addressed through the number of volunteer roles that Jo holds. Like many in agriculture, it's astronomical, and it is this innate quality of people living in rural New Zealand that keeps our small communities thriving. Goal number 15, life on land, is reflected through Jo's efforts, on top of everything else, into her own on-farm native plant nursery. I can't wait to see the ecosystems that these plantings will create and the biodiversity within them. Lastly, I want to draw your attention to Jo's newest role on the board of Meet the Need, making progress towards goal number 2, zero hunger. Meet the Need is an incredible charity enabling New Zealand farmers to donate high-quality protein in the form of mince or milk to food banks nationwide, helping New Zealand farmers feed New Zealand families in need.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Whole Story podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it and are feeling inspired and optimistic about putting sustainability into practice on farm. I have one last request for you before you go. Make sure, whatever platform you're listening to us on, that you hit follow and share the show or episodes with your friends, so that together we can grow our community and inspire sustainability in agriculture in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And thanks again to FMG for partnering with The Whole Story so that we could bring this podcast to life for you all to enjoy. Catch you next time.